Today, we're diving into one of the most incredible first-person accounts you'll ever find. It's the story of a world ruler, a king at the absolute peak of his power who loses literally everything, including his sanity, only to get it all back again. And what makes this so wild is that this isn't some historian writing about it centuries later. No, this is the king's own story, which he himself sent out as an official decree to his entire empire.
So the story kind of starts at its own end. This right here is the official proclamation from King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. I mean, try to imagine you're a regular citizen in the most powerful empire on earth. Your king, this figure of immense and, let's be honest, often ruthless power, sends out this message. You'd be thinking, what on earth could possibly happen to a man like that to make him publicly declare his total submission to a higher power?
To really understand the scale of the fall, you've got to appreciate just how high he was. And Nebuchadnezzar sets the scene for us himself. He's not fighting a war, he's not dealing with a rebellion. He is, in his own words, contented and prosperous. He's achieved it all: total security, unbelievable wealth, absolute power. The man is on top of the world, with nothing at all to fear. But that perfect peace, it's about to be completely shattered. A dream comes to him. A vision so vivid and so disturbing that it leaves him genuinely terrified. So he does what any king would do. He calls in all his magicians, enchanters, and wise men, but not a single one of them can tell him what it means.
The whole dream centers on this one single powerful image, a tree. And notice where it is, not just in some forest, but at the very center of the world. And its size is described as just enormous. So right away, you know this isn't just a tree, it's a symbol of cosmic importance.
The scale is just almost impossible to imagine. Its top is literally touching the sky, making it so ridiculously huge that no matter where you were on the planet, you could see it. It was this universal, unmissable presence.
And this tree wasn't just big, it was good. It was this source of life and security for everyone and everything. It had beautiful leaves, tons of fruit that fed the whole world. All the animals found shelter under it, all the birds lived in its branches. It was the very picture of a perfect, all-providing kingdom. But then, the dream takes a very dark turn.
Suddenly, bam! The peaceful scene is just interrupted. A divine being, called a messenger, or a holy one, comes down from heaven. And the second this figure shows up, you know what's about to happen isn't just a random act of nature. It's a divine judgment.
And the command is just shocking. The messenger shouts at the top of his lungs, cut the tree down, strip its leaves, scatter its fruit. But then there's this very specific, very crucial instruction. Leave the stump. Don't destroy it completely. Bind it up with iron and bronze and leave the roots in the ground. That one little detail? Well, that's the key to this whole thing.
So, with all his own experts, totally clueless, the king finally calls for Daniel, a Hebrew exile who is famous for his wisdom. And when Daniel hears the dream, he's visibly shaken, so much so that he just stands there, speechless, for a whole hour. The king actually has to tell him, hey, don't be alarmed. But Daniel knows this is not good news for the king.
Daniel doesn't beat around the bush. He looks the most powerful man on the planet in the eye and says it plainly. Your Majesty, you are that tree. He connects all of it, the tree's greatness, its strength, the fact that the whole world could see it, directly to Nebuchadnezzar's own power and his majesty.
And then comes the truly terrifying part, the command to cut down the tree. That was a prophecy about the king himself. He would be driven away from people, forced to live with wild animals, eat grass like an ox, and be totally exposed to the elements for a period of 7 times, which pretty much all scholars agree means 7 years.
But here's the thing. This wasn't just a punishment for punishment's sake. It had a purpose. The whole ordeal would last until Nebuchadnezzar finally learned one very specific lesson. That his kingdom, his power, his glory, none of it was his own creation. It was all given to him by a higher power who is in charge of all kingdoms on earth.
Now, Daniel doesn't just deliver a doomsday prophecy and walk away. He actually offers the king a way out. He pleads with him to change his ways, to stop doing wrong, to start pursuing justice, and specifically to be kind to the poor and oppressed. He's saying, if you just humble yourself now, maybe, just maybe, none of this has to happen.
So you've got this terrifying prophecy on one side and a clear path to avoid it on the other. What does the king do? Well, this next part is the climax of the story, where the king's choice pretty much seals his fate. What's so fascinating is that the judgment doesn't happen right away. A full 12 months go by, An entire year. This gives the king plenty of time to think about the warning, to take Daniel's advice, but he doesn't.
A year later, the king is taking a walk on the roof of his royal palace. He's looking out over the magnificent city of Babylon, with its hanging gardens and its massive walls, and he says these exact words. Just listen to the language. "I have built my mighty power, my majesty." It's all about him. He's taking every ounce of credit for himself.
And the response is instantaneous. The account says the words were still on his lips when a voice from heaven pronounced the sentence. And at that very moment, the prophecy came true. The judgment he'd been warned about a year earlier came crashing down on him.
The totality of his fall is just staggering. I mean, this comparison says it all. He goes from being the king of the world's greatest empire to being driven away from people. From living in a palace to living with wild animals. From eating royal food to eating grass. Even his physical appearance changed, with his hair growing like eagle's feathers and his nails like bird claws. He was stripped of everything that made him a king, and you could say everything that made him seem human.
But remember the stump? The prophecy was never about total destruction, just a period of humbling. So this final chapter of the story details his incredible path back to the throne.
And the restoration happens in these really clear stages. After the 7 years are over, the king does something he hadn't done before. He raises his eyes toward heaven. And in that one moment of looking up, of acknowledging a power higher than himself, his sanity comes back. The very next thing he does is praise God, and it's only then that his kingdom, his throne, everything is returned to him by his own advisors.
And here is maybe the most remarkable part of the whole story. He wasn't just put back in his old position. The text says he became even greater than before. His humbling didn't diminish him in the end, it actually elevated him.
Which brings us right back to where we started, the king's public decree to his entire empire. Because after going through this whole unbelievable ordeal, you can imagine he has a completely new perspective on what power is all about.
This is his conclusion. The same man who once boasted of my power and my majesty is now proclaiming an eternal power that isn't his. He finally acknowledges an ultimate authority who does as he pleases, whose power is absolute and who can't be questioned by anyone. He finally learned the lesson of the dream. And so this ancient king's very personal, very public story leaves us with a huge question to think about. In a world that so often equates strength with pride and self-sufficiency, this account suggests something totally different. It asks us all to reflect, what is the true foundation of lasting power and greatness? Is it what we can build for ourselves, or is it something else entirely?